and I don't know how you transition this one, but Jake Paul has had a response from Oleksandr Usyk about his challenge to face him in the ring. Usyk has come out on social media and said, "No, Jake, I am not going to fight you in a boxing ring, but when my boxing career winds down, which most expect to happen in the near future, I am willing to step into the cage against you and fight Jake Paul in MMA." So I'll ask you this. Would you prefer to see Jake Paul fight Usyk in boxing, or would you rather see him fight him in an MMA cage?
Easy, MMA. Because MMA, at least there'll be some intrigue there. We never seen Usyk the Great, one of the all-time greatest heavyweights in boxing, actually step into an MMA cage. But we know this man can box. We know he can dance, and I'm pretty sure he can wrestle because he's a man of many talents. Jake Paul, I'm positive he can wrestle. He's one of these Ohio boys. These guys are born wrestling before they learn to box. Very athletic is Jake Paul. So I'm sure it'll be more of a competition when Usyk is off his feet and on the mat. So yeah, they'll be intrigued, especially if you try to sell it to the UFC crowd, because Jake Paul already went and violated the boxing crowd. He took boxing money, and he put undercards that were great. He put on great shows. Good for him. But the boxing sucked for him. So maybe he can do the exact same thing to MMA and take advantage of those fans. Put on a great MMA undercard, and then he can have the circus at the top slot with Oleksandr Usyk. Yeah, that's interesting. Why not?
I don't know. Every time I think of boxers going into MMA, I flash back to the only UFC card I ever attended, and that was in Boston, Massachusetts. UFC, I think it was 118, and we saw James Toney fight Randy Couture. And James Toney, who at that point was still like a guy in boxing, got destroyed. One round, that was it. I don't want to see. Look, I get what you're saying. Jake does have a bit of a wrestling background from his high school days, and Usyk wouldn't surprise me if Usyk is like a Terrence Crawford type, where he's just like great at wrestling and great at everything that he does. I still think it's kind of goofy to see those two guys in a cage. I know you're against seeing a Jake Usyk boxing match, but for Usyk, I'd like to see him get what would undoubtedly be the easiest payday of his career. Like, do a fight against Jake Paul in the boxing ring, the last fight of your career. Do it back in your home country. Do it in the Ukraine, and do it in front of 80,000 fans in the summer of 2026 or whatever. Look, Jake is not like, Jake,
because you're rewarding the circus. Yeah,
we're already doing that.
I know you're trying to throw a golden retirement bone to an all-time great
to a guy that deserves it.
If you're throwing one golden bone to Usyk, you're probably throwing a dozen golden bones to Jake Paul, who continues to kill and laugh all the way to the bank. This guy's killing the sport by doing all this, and he's laughing all the way to the bank. So no, I don't want to reward Jake Paul just by rewarding a great like Usyk, because the reward's going to be much higher on the circus act than the actual all-time great boxer.
Yeah, but do you think that the Chavez Jr. fight was Jake Paul disrespecting the sport?
No, and I gave him credit for that on this show. I said it was actually a great environment. It was a
quality win at the time, like not a terrible win. Like Chavez was not what he used to be, but like for a guy with 10 or 11 pro fights to take on Chavez, that's not nothing to me. So I get what you're saying. You don't want to reward Jake Paul for just sort of like navigating his way into that type of opportunity. That's what happens sometimes. Like, popularity reigns supreme. And look, I don't know if it would be for Usyk's titles. I doubt it. I don't think every one of these sanctioning bodies would sanction a Jake Paul fight for a heavyweight world championship. But even if it's not, like, it's just a big event. And if Usyk goes out against Joseph Parker and beats Parker and winds up beating every heavyweight of his era, like, forget the Moses Taumas and the other young guys coming up the ranks. Like, Usyk's in a different era. Like, and if Usyk beats Parker, he will have defeated, virtually every heavyweight champion from that era, taking Deontay Wilder out of the mix. Maybe he fights Wilder too. Maybe he finishes his career and like fights Parker, fights Wilder, and actually wipes out everybody from this era. After he does that, if he wants to fight Jake Paul, I think it's kind of a cool event in Ukraine, like in front of 80,000 people. That's my take on that.
Oh yeah, I mean, cool for you because you would like to see that spectacle, but for me, who bled for the sport, we don't want to pay for that spectacle. Now, if Jake Paul actually wants to do a Chavez
I don't even know
Jr.
if you'd
type
pay for
fight?
that spectacle.
Why
I think
doesn't he fight Carl Froch, who's been calling him out? Why doesn't he fight a James DeGale, who just came back? Why doesn't he fight a real champion like that? And
why
then we can give Jake Paul his flowers when he's
why
fighting a
would he
guy
do
that actually,
that? Why would he do that? Why would
because
you fight James DeGale if you're Jake Paul? Like, what does that do for you?
it's a
James
gold
DeGale hasn't
medalist.
boxed in
That's a gold
6
medalist
years.
and a champion. I mean, why
6
not?
years ago. 6 years ago, he was a champion.
Yeah, but he just finished fighting, so he's not
He
inactive.
just finished a BKFC fight. Okay, he didn't finish in the
Boxers will
ring.
give him credit for that, is what I'm saying.
He doesn't
But we
need
will
credit.
not give Jake Paul credit for fighting a guy in an MMA ring that's a boxing great. That we're not going to do. That continues the circus that he's cashing out on. That continues the criticism that I continue giving him. Just when I start giving him credit, he takes it right back because this man Jake Paul refuses to take a real challenge at the peak time. Not even the peak time, just a real challenge. I think James DeGale will beat Jake Paul. Even at this stage of his career, I think Carl Froch annihilates Jake Paul. I think a lot of boxers that have been out of the ring, 5-6 years will beat Jake Paul as long as the size is even, as long as the power is even. But now when you're a 5'5", 140-pounder,
now
Tank
we're going
Davis,
back to
that's
that.
ridiculous.
I agree with that. I've been on record saying it's going to look goofy in the ring. I honestly, there are people thinking. I know a lot of people thinking Tank's going to win. I don't see it. I think Jake's going to wind up rehydrating to like 215 pounds and just be overwhelmingly large in the ring compared to Tank Davis. And when Tank is at the weight that he's probably going to be at, he's probably not going to be as fast. He's not going to be as quick with his reflexes. And he's, like we pointed out at the top of the show, he's not going to care all that much. Like, Tank is clearly here for a check. I just don't think that's going to happen. I just push back a little bit, Sergio, on like it's not the same thing because you earned your opportunity, but like, you benefited from popularity, right? Like, you benefited from getting the springboard that NBC gave you, being viewed by 13 million people in a finale. Like, popularity helps everybody on some level. Now, Jake has done it on a completely different level, but I think it's not a shameful thing to see Jake Paul in against Usyk in a fight that probably wouldn't be sanctioned for the heavyweight titles and would just be a big event. And Usyk, more than anyone, has earned it. He's earned this opportunity after fighting all the guys that he's supposed to fight. 2 fights against Fury, 2 fights against Dubois, 2 fights against Anthony Joshua. I mean, give this guy a golden parachute on the way out the door. Give him the gift of a Jake Paul event.
For Usyk, I'm not hating against it. So look, I'm going to keep it the same. For Usyk, it's a great farewell fight, but I don't want to give that luxury to Jake Paul because Jake Paul has skipped a lot of steps and he refuses to take risks. So just when I give him a little bit of credit of Chavez Jr., and that's credit, I gave it to him. I was right here on this show. I said, man, I gave him I applauded him. All right. Now he's going backwards with Tank Davis. And if he doesn't give us a good fight in between, Usyk's too much in boxing. That's way too much. Someone in between. Why don't you go? You're going from a lightweight in Tank Davis to skipping middleweight and light heavyweight and going all the way to heavyweight. Why don't you fight someone in the middle? That's what I'm talking about. Carl Froch and James DeGale and a Sergio Mora. I can go up to I'm weighing 190 nowadays, Mannix. I'm weighing 190 nowadays, baby. So look, that's when I start giving them respect because we got chances. We may be has-beens and we're in our 40s, but we could still fight the ass off of these Disney stars.
Well, we've finally got to the root of all this. Jake Paul versus Sergio Mora, calling for it for the umpteenth time.